Today you are going to take a closer look at the lesson that we completed yesterday, focusing on the text Ceremonial Tea House Sonkodaku. It was a nonfiction article, and the text and images were provided courtesy of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. We are going to be focusing on the skills of identifying the main idea and selecting an appropriate heading for a passage. We started the lesson by looking at a collage of images. The images include architectural structures known as tea houses. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, you see a tea ceremony in process, and in the top right-hand corner, of course, you see a teapot. After activating our background knowledge about tea and tea ceremonies, we looked at this passage, and we were working towards identifying the main idea and coming up with a heading to fill in that missing heading. I am going to read the passage, focusing on identifying the main idea. The Japanese tea ceremony is called kanoyu, sado, or simply ocha in Japanese. It is a choreographed ritual of preparing and serving Japanese green tea called matcha with Japanese sweet treats. The whole process is not about drinking tea, but is about preparing a bowl of tea from one's heart and honoring one's guests. The host of the ceremony always considers the guests with every movement and gesture. Even the placement of the tea utensils is considered from the guest's viewpoint, especially the guests of honor, called the shoyaku. The first step to identifying the main idea is identifying the topic. I identify a topic by noticing repeated words. I notice that the words tea and tea ceremony are repeated throughout the text, and I know that this is a major topic in this passage. I also notice that the word guests is repeated throughout the passage. Using these two repeated words, I'm going to formulate a main idea. I think the main idea is that tea ceremonies are performed to honor the guests. Let's look at the main idea question below. What is the main goal of this section of the text? The correct answer is to show the reader that a tea ceremony is not just about drinking tea. It is a detailed ritual that is more about honoring your guests. This is very similar to the main idea that I came up with on my own, that tea ceremonies are performed to honor guests. Next, we are going to choose an appropriate heading for this section. Let's look very carefully at each option and choose the best answer. Is it A, Japanese sweets? I don't feel that this answer is correct because the text is not mostly about sweets. Is it B, how to prepare tea? I don't feel that this answer is correct either. The text does not tell the reader how to prepare tea. Let's jump to D, types of green tea. This answer is also wrong. The text does not describe different types of green tea. Answer C, tea served from the heart. This feels right. This heading supports the main idea. The main idea that tea ceremonies are performed to honor the guests. Tea served from the heart can truly honor a guest. And that is why this is the strongest answer. Remember, when identifying a main idea, ask yourself which heading expresses what the text is mostly about. Let's look at the first section of the nonfiction article, Ceremonial Tea House Sonkodaku. Heading number 1. As you can see, the heading is missing. We will choose an appropriate heading later on. Paragraph 1. Preparing for the tea ceremony means hard work for the host. Not only does the host have to select utensils and other equipment, but a theme has to be chosen, flowers have to be collected, and food needs to be prepared. Tea ceremony themes, flowers, and foods commonly represent the season of the year, particularly during cherry blossom season. On top of these tasks, the room needs to be in perfect condition and, of course, very clean before guests can be received. Tatami mats are the traditional flooring for a ceremonial tea room. The tatami mats must be swept before the ceremony. Sliding doors and windows, which have Japanese washi paper covering, need to be checked for holes or other dirty spots. When these appear unclean, the host needs to have the old washi paper replaced with new paper. Other preparations include pruning the garden and clearing the roji path leading up to the tea room. In this passage, I'm going to use the strategy of collecting supporting details to build my main idea. I notice that a lot of the supporting details in this section of the text are talking about what the host needs to do before a tea ceremony. Notice the boxed areas. In the first line, it shows that the ceremony is hard work for the host. And then the boxes that follow show the different tasks that the host must perform, such as selecting utensils, choosing a theme, collecting flowers, and preparing food. As you continue, you learn that the host must also sweep the tatami mats, check for holes and dirty spots on sliding doors and windows, prune the garden, and clear the roji path. All of these supporting details are telling me about what the host must do in order to prepare for a traditional tea ceremony. With that in mind, let's answer question 1. What was this passage mostly about? Was it A, how to clean a tatami mat? B, what the inside of a traditional tea house looks like? C, the tasks the host needs to complete before a tea ceremony? D, the history of tea houses and ceremonies in Japan. Please select your answer on your handout. Feel free to pause the video if you need a moment to think. Now, let's choose a heading that is most appropriate for this section. Question 2. Which heading would be best for this section? A, how to make ceremonial tea. B, the history of Japanese tea houses. C, cleaning tatami mats. D, tea ceremony preparations. Feel free to pause the video if you would like a moment to think about your answer. Now we are ready for section 2 of the text. Notice that it says heading number 2. We are of course going to replace this with a more appropriate heading later on. Paragraph 2. Now imagine that you are a guest at this Japanese tea house set in a tranquil garden. Before the tea ceremony begins, you wait in the building on the right to quietly prepare for the ritual. After a signal from the host, you walk slowly along the stone path to a mossy stone basin and wash your face and hands. Before entering the tea house, you must remove your shoes and bow, then crawl through a small door. Its low height is meant to remind you and the other guests to enter the tea room and the ceremony with humility and respect. Once inside, you may notice that there are no chairs. Instead, there are 3 tatami mats. Mats made of rice plant straw on the floor. The entire tea house is made from natural materials such as cedar and bamboo, creating a sense of harmony with nature. A branch of Japanese evergreen extends along the half wall inside the house as a reminder of what grew there before. During the tea ceremony, the honored guests use modest language, ask questions in a clear voice, and always thank the host for providing an answer. Now we are ready to identify the main idea. Let's use the strategy of using supporting details from the text to come up with a main idea of this passage. It says that you are a guest, and then from there on, you learn about what you would do as a guest. You would wait in a building to the right quietly. You would walk slowly along a stone path and wash your face and hands. You would remove your shoes and bow, and then crawl through a small door. You would enter the tea room and the ceremony with humility and respect. And finally, you would speak with modest language, ask questions in a clear voice, and always say thank you to your host. Each of these details talks about how the guest is expected to behave. All of the behaviors of the guest seem highly respectful to the ceremony. Now that we have looked at these supporting details, let's answer the question about what this text is mostly about. Question 3. What was this passage mostly about? A. The guests removing their shoes and bowing. B. The materials the tea house is made of, such as cedar and bamboo. C. The guests waiting for the ceremony to begin in a building to the right. D. The guests following traditional tea ceremony steps to show respect. Go ahead and select your answer on your handout. Feel free to pause the video in order to think about your answer. Now that you've selected what the text is mostly about, you're ready to choose an appropriate heading. Question 4. Which heading would be best for this section? Is it A. How to make ceremonial tea? B. Hosting your first tea ceremony? C. The humble tea house guest? D. Traditional tea house interiors. Feel free to pause the video in order to think about your answer. Now you are ready to try a passage on your own. I am simply going to read the text, and you are going to think about what this text is mostly about. Remember to use your strategies. Figure out what the topic is, and then ask yourself, what about that topic? Or you can collect the supporting details and figure out what they all have in common. What do all the supporting details actually support? The main idea. I'm going to read the passage now. As important as water conservation is, it is also very easy. A few simple habits can significantly reduce the water consumption of a household. One way to save water is to turn off the faucet when brushing your teeth. Also, don't allow your faucets to drip. One drip may not seem like a lot, but they can add up over time. Baths require less water than showers. By taking a bath instead of a shower, you can reduce the amount of water you use at home. In the kitchen, running a dishwasher when it is full rather than half full can save 20 gallons a day. These simple changes will surely save water and money. Feel free to pause the text and reread the passage on your own to think about what the text is mostly about. Question 5. What was the main idea of the passage? A. Conserving water is important for the environment. B. Consumers can save money by conserving water. C. A few simple changes around your home can save water. D. Baths use less water than showers. Select your answer and note it on your handout. Feel free to pause the video to think about your answer. And finally, question 6. Which heading would be best for this passage? A. Protect the environment. B. Water conservation in the home. C. Tips for saving money. D. Choose baths, not showers. Please select the best answer on your handout. You have now completed this closer look at main idea and selecting best headings. Thank you.